It was 1887, and the land past the Black Hills was quiet, like it was holding its breath. It was a tough place, all dry and windy, with a big sky that didn't care about anyone. For Arthur, a 13-year-old kid, this place wasn't a dream. It was hard. He lived near a little town called Redemption Creek, a name that felt like a mean joke. He was too young to get it all, but he felt it deep inside. Arthur had no parents. They died from sickness 2 winters ago. He was like a leaf blowing around, living in forgotten spots. A broken shed behind an old stable, a hollow tree by the creek, or dark corners. People in town didn't see him as a kid, but as a bother, like a stray dog they'd shoo away, a reminder of how tough life was. They didn't trust him, and nobody ever showed him kindness. So he learned to be quiet, like a shadow. He figured out how to spot bent sticks or faint tracks in the dirt. He knew where rabbits and birds hid, where wild onions grew, and how to set a trap just right. His life was lonely, measured by his hungry stomach and the changing seasons. He was like a ghost nobody noticed, with only the wind and a big, empty loneliness as his friends. His days were simple but hard. He'd wake up before the sun hit the cliffs, check his traps for a rabbit or bird, and steer clear of Garrett Shaw, the tough sheriff whose stare felt like a punch. He'd look for anything useful, a lost nail, a bit of string, or a half-rotten apple. Then he'd go to the creek, the one place that felt like his, where leaves sounded nicer than people's voices. His life was quiet, and his face looked older than it should, with eyes always careful. He was trapped, not by walls, but by being invisible, like wearing a cloak nobody could see through. One hot afternoon, with the sun like a big gold coin, Arthur was by the creek, hoping to catch a fish in a deep pool. The air was still, and bugs were buzzing. Then he heard a weird, low sound, like someone struggling. It wasn't an animal he knew. Fear, his oldest friend, told him to run. Trouble out here was dangerous, and he stayed alive by staying small and quiet. But something else, a tiny spark of caring, kept him still. He moved slowly, his bare feet, silent on the dry ground, crouching low. He slipped through some willows, their leaves brushing his patched shirt, and looked through the branches. What he saw made him freeze. The creek had a muddy bend, a shiny patch of quicksand, and in the middle, stuck up to her waist, was a woman. She was Lakota, her hair messy with mud, her deerskin dress dirty and heavy. One arm reached out, grabbing at the mud, while the other stayed tight against her side. Her face, full of pain and tiredness, was turned away, but he saw the mud pulling her down with every little move. An eagle feather in her hair, something special, was dirty and sad. Her leg was bent wrong, caught by the mud, and probably hurt before she fell in. Arthur's heart pounded. The town called the Lakota ghosts, or devils, scary people from the edges of their world. He grew up hearing they were dangerous, that meeting one could mean death. Sheriff Shaw would call him dumb, and the town would hate him. He should run and forget her. It was the smart, safe thing. But he couldn't. He didn't see a scary person, just someone stuck and scared, like he felt on cold, lonely nights. Her fight to live cut through all the bad things he'd been told. For a long, quiet moment, it was just the two of them, caught in a scary scene. Then Arthur decided. He stepped out from the willows, done being invisible. The woman heard him, and turned, her dark eyes wide with new fear, staring at him. She saw a skinny white kid in torn clothes, from the world that hurt her people. Her body froze, waiting for something bad. Arthur raised his hands, palms out, hoping she'd understand he meant no harm. "I'll help," he said, his voice shaky from not talking much. He knew he couldn't jump in. The quicksand would get him too. His brain, sharp from surviving, raced. He looked around and saw a fallen cottonwood tree, its branches white from the sun. He ran to it, ignoring sharp rocks under his feet, and pushed hard to free a long, strong branch. It was heavy, but seeing her sink more gave him strength. He dragged it to the mud and pushed it toward her. "Take it," he yelled, louder now. "Grab on." She looked at the branch, then at him, her eyes full of doubt. Trust was hard for both of them. For her, a white kid's help could be a trick. For him, staying there was risky. He saw her hesitate. "Please," he said softly, "but fast. It'll pull you down." She stared at him, maybe seeing something honest in his scared eyes. Slowly, she reached out, her shaking fingers touching the wood. She grabbed it, her grip strong. "Pull when I say," Arthur said, sounding sure in a way he didn't expect. He lay flat on solid ground, digging his toes in, and held the branch. "Now," he pulled, and the branch bent. For a scary second, nothing happened. The mud was too strong. She gasped in pain as it moved her hurt leg. Arthur gritted his teeth, sweat in his eyes, and pulled harder, using all his strength. He felt the mud give a little. "Again," he shouted, mostly to himself. They pulled together, fighting the mud. It made gross noises but started to let go. Slowly, inch by inch, he pulled her to the bank. Her body was heavy with mud. When her chest was out, he ran to her, grabbed under her arms, and pulled her onto the grass. She fell, breathing hard, shaking from shock and tiredness. Mud stuck to her like a second skin. Arthur stepped back, shaking too, his lungs burning. They just sat there, breathing heavily, with bugs humming around them. He did it. He saved her from the mud. But now he felt a new, trickier fear. What next? She pushed herself up on her elbows, moving stiffly. Her eyes, when they met his, weren't scared anymore, but tired, with a careful look, like she was sizing him up. She was alive but hurt, and they were alone in a world that didn't want either of them. It was quiet, heavy, like the mud on her. Arthur stood a bit away, watching, his energy fading into a hollow feeling. He knew the risk he took in the big gap between them. She was Lakota. He was white. That's all that was supposed to matter. Out here, she tried to sit up, but hissed in pain. She looked at her leg, still half in the mud at the bank's edge. Arthur looked too and saw her ankle, twisted bad and swelling. It was broken. She couldn't move. His first thought from years of staying safe was to leave. He'd saved her from the quicksand. That was enough. He should disappear and let her people find her. But leaving her hurt and alone felt wrong, like breaking the bond they made fighting the mud. He stepped closer and pointed at her ankle. "Broken?" he asked, the word feeling small. She nodded sharply, jaw tight, staring at her leg like she could fix it by looking. She was proud, not wanting to ask him for more. Arthur's mind spun. He couldn't take her to town. Sheriff Shaw would lock her up. Or worse, the town would turn mean. He was alone. That meant taking her to his only safe place, the broken shed he called home. It scared him. Helping her in a panic was one thing. Bringing her to his place was another. He looked at her, saw the pain in her eyes, the strong set of her mouth. She wasn't an enemy, just a hurt, lonely person like him. "I got a place," he said quietly, surprising himself. "It's not much, but it's dry, safe." She looked up, her eyes searching his face, weighing his words. He saw her struggle, mistrust fighting her need. He waited, knowing her choice would affect them both. After a long moment, she nodded slightly. Getting her there was tough. He found another branch for a crutch. With him holding her up on one side and the branch on the other, they moved slowly from the creek. Every step hurt her, and he felt her shaking. They didn't talk or know each other's names. Their only connection was her pain breathing and his grunts from effort. They were two outsiders moving through a world that didn't want them. His shelter was just some old boards and logs against a rock, hidden by pines. It was sad, but it was his. He helped her inside, setting her on his bed, a pile of leaves and grass with a thin blanket he found. The place was tiny, smelling of dust and smoke. He made a small fire outside, moving like he always did to survive. He got water from a hidden spring in his only bucket and gave it to her. She drank a lot, her eyes closing for a moment. He looked at her ankle. It was worse, swollen and discolored. He knew from traps and hurt animals that a broken bone needed to be set right. He didn't know how for a person, but he remembered his dad fixing a calf's leg long ago. "I have to," he said, pointing at her leg. "It needs to be straight." She understood, a flicker of fear in her eyes, but she stayed strong. She lay back, nodded, and gripped the blanket. Arthur's hand shook as he held her foot, cool and damp. He took a deep breath, trying to remember his dad's hands. He pulled gently but firmly. She let out a horrible cry, her body arching in pain. He felt a sickening pop as the bones moved. He thought he messed up and backed away, scared, but the leg looked better, less twisted. She lay there, breathing hard, sweat on her face, but her jaw relaxed a bit. He hadn't failed. He used 2 flat pieces of wood and tore his shirt to make a splint, tying it carefully. He spent the day looking after her, worried but focused. He had a rabbit from his trap and cooked it, the simple food feeling like a big deal. He gave her some on a piece of bark. She ate slowly, quietly. The silence in the shelter wasn't empty anymore. It was a shared quiet, full of questions and a careful trust. He sat by the entrance, watching. His world was now this small space and the hurt woman in it. He wasn't just surviving, he was protecting. As the sun set, painting the sky purple and orange, he watched her sleep, exhausted. Mud was dried on her skin and hair. Gently, he took a clean rag and water and wiped her face. Under the dirt, she looked strong and kind. He cleaned her eagle feather carefully. It felt special, like something he hadn't done since his mom was sick. As he worked, his fear of her being different faded. She was just a person, like him. For 3 days, they settled into a quiet routine in the shelter. Arthur hunted and gathered. Now for both of them, he'd come back and find her watching him, her eyes hard to read. They barely talked, using gestures and small words. He learned her head tilt meant thank you, and a certain look meant she hurt. On the 2nd day, she spoke. He gave her willow bark tea for pain, something he knew about. As she took the cup, her fingers touched his, and she looked at him. "Winona," she said, touching her chest. "Arthur," he answered, surprised. Saying their names felt like making a deal, a small bridge between their worlds. He started seeing her as a person, not just someone hurt. He noticed her watching birds, looking sad. He saw her hands, graceful when not in pain, braiding her hair. One day, she showed him which herbs were better for swelling or cleaning wounds, using gestures in her language. He brought food, but she had knowledge. He started to respect her and wonder about her world. Winona watched Arthur too. She saw his poor life, his torn clothes, his constant hunger, and his deep loneliness. But she also saw his strength, his skills, and his kindness. He saved her without thinking, cared for her gently, and shared his little food. In his careful eyes, she saw not hate, but a kid who'd lost everything. Her own anger, built from years of hurt, started to fade. This boy was different. Their silence got easier, more comfortable. Sometimes, as he fixed traps or sharpened the knife, he'd feel her watching. When he looked up, she'd give a small smile, a gift better than food or water. For the first time in years, Arthur felt seen. He wasn't a ghost anymore. He was Arthur, and he had a friend named Winona. He felt protective of her. Their broken shelter was a safe place, a tiny island in a mean world. But on the 4th morning, trouble came. Arthur was back from checking traps, holding a skinny squirrel, when he heard horses, not on the main path but in the woods, moving slowly like they were looking for something. His heart froze. It wasn't the sheriff. This was too far out. He crouched and peeked through the trees. 3 Lakota warriors on horses were searching, their eyes scanning the ground. One, with a face like stone and sharp eyes, stopped his horse. He saw their tracks and pointed. They were coming to the shelter. Arthur panicked. They'd think he hurt Winona. He ran back and whispered, "They're here." "Your people." Winona sat up, tense but not scared, more relieved and worried. She looked at him and said calmly, "Do not be afraid, Arthur." But he was terrified. The lead warrior, Chayton, got off his horse, a long knife at his hip, moving like danger. He walked to the shelter, his friends behind him, looking suspicious. Chayton stared at Arthur, who stood frozen in the doorway, a scared kid blocking the way. The warrior's eyes were cold, promising trouble. He stepped forward, hand on his knife. Arthur braced himself. "Chayton, stop!" Winona's voice came from inside, strong and commanding. Chayton froze, his face changing to shock, then relief. He pushed past Arthur and knelt by Winona, talking fast in their language. Arthur stood trembling as the others gathered around, their anger turning to confusion and respect. They weren't just looking for a lost person. Winona was special to them, almost holy. Chayton looked at Arthur, no longer suspicious but curious. Winona spoke, her eyes on Arthur, telling them what happened. Chayton listened, looking from her splinted leg to the ragged boy. When she finished, it was quiet. Then a loud voice broke the peace. "All right, you savages, hold it right there." Sheriff Shaw crashed into the clearing, shotgun raised, with 5 townsmen, a quick posse with rifles and anger. Someone must have seen Arthur's tracks with Winona's and thought trouble. To them, it looked like Arthur was trapped by hostile natives. "We're here to get the boy," Shaw yelled, red-faced. "Let him go, and we might let you walk away." Chayton and his warriors stood, hands on weapons, forming a wall to protect Winona. The air was tense, ready to explode. Arthur was stuck in the middle of 2 worlds crashing together. On one side was Shaw and his men, scared, but ready to fight, rifles shining in the sun. On the other, Chayton and his warriors, calm but ready, faces hard. In the middle was Arthur, and behind him, Winona. "Give us the boy," Shaw barked. "He's ours." Chayton growled, understanding the threat, his hand tight on his knife. Arthur wanted to run and hide, to be the ghost again. But he looked at Winona, pale but strong, and remembered their fight, their trust, their safe shelter. Something in him changed. Fear was there, but so was something new: courage. He stepped out of the shelter's shadow into the tense space between them. He was small in rags, but he stood tall. "He's wrong," Arthur said quietly, but everyone heard. Every eye turned to him. "They didn't take me." Shaw looked shocked. "Son, don't be scared. We're here to help. Step aside." "No," Arthur said, shaking his head, standing firm in front of Winona. "You don't get it. She was hurt, stuck in quicksand, her leg broken. I pulled her out. I brought her here." He pointed at Chayton. "They're not hurting me. They're her people, here to find her." His simple, honest words hung there, so different from the hate and fear everyone expected. Some of Shaw's men looked unsure. Shaw's face got hard, his voice angry. "You're a fool, boy. A traitor. They've tricked you. Move or you'll get hurt." He raised his shotgun. Then a clear voice cut through. "He speaks the truth." Winona came out, leaning on a warrior, moving with pain but pride, like a queen. She stared at Shaw, her eyes steady and old as the hills. She spoke perfect English, fearless. "This boy Arthur saved my life. When I was stuck, he was kind. When I hurt, he helped. He has more honor than you and your armed men." The posse went quiet. They expected to fight savages, not meet a strong, well-spoken woman and a loyal kid they ignored. Shaw sputtered. "Now listen here." "No," Winona cut in, her voice sharp. "You listen. You came to my friend's home with guns and threats. You judged without knowing, blamed without reason. Arthur is under my protection now, and so is his home. Leave." Chayton watched, seeing Arthur's courage and Winona's strength. He understood Arthur didn't just save her, he protected her. He moved his hand off his knife, a small sign of peace. Shaw looked from Winona to Chayton, then his men, who were doubting. He was outnumbered and outsmarted. His big plan looked foolish. Cursing, he lowered his gun. "Have it your way, boy," he snarled at Arthur. "You chose them. Don't come back when they turn on you." He stomped off, his men following, embarrassed. The danger left, and the clearing felt calm, almost holy. Chayton walked to Arthur and put a big hand on his shoulder, a look of respect saying, "You're one of us." Winona smiled, bright and real. "You stood, Arthur," she said softly. "You were taught to run, but you stood for me." He nodded, his throat tight, feeling shaky but whole. He faced the world that pushed him out and didn't break. In the days after, the shelter became a place of healing. Chayton and his warriors camped nearby, watching quietly. They treated Arthur with respect, sharing food and teaching him about arrows. He wasn't the town's stray anymore. He was the boy who saved their special woman. Winona wasn't a queen with a crown, but a keeper of stories, the heart of her people. Saving her meant saving part of their spirit. When her ankle was better, they made a travois to carry her. It was time to leave. On a clear morning, Winona called Arthur. "We're going to our winter camp," she said. "A place with family and belonging. There's a place for you, Arthur. A home." She held out a small carved wooden bird. "This is for you to remember courage lets you fly." Arthur took it, feeling its weight. He looked at Winona, Chayton, and the others, seeing a family, a purpose, a place he belonged. He looked at his sad shelter, then the open land toward their camp. The world saw him as nothing but one kind act helping a stranger and mud changed. He wasn't just Arthur, the forgotten kid. He was Arthur, Winona's friend, the boy who stood. He looked at the path to Redemption Creek's cold silence, then the trail with the Lakota. He'd been alone so long and didn't want to be anymore. A real smile spread across his face, the first true one ever. He tucked the bird in his pocket and turned to his new family, ready to walk toward the horizon. His home wasn't wood or nails, but a bond made in mud, tested by danger and built on unexpected kindness.